Well, hello and welcome. I'm Sue Britz,
And I'm Tina Lookbach. Welcome to Retired.
the podcast where we talk about what life is like when we put on new tread, new wheels that move us to our next adventure. So, Tina, we have a guest here today. This is my friend and colleague, Meera Klein. In fact, that's how I've always known you as Meera Klein. Welcome, Meera.
Hey, it's great to be here, Sue.
Meera is here on Retired because she's got more than one identity for sure. Um, I have to say, I've known her. I'm going back in time now, Meera. I'm thinking we're 25 years.
Yeah, I like that. Something close to.
That's a long time to know each other. I met her when I she was at our school, and her children were too, and I got to be one of her kids' teachers. So, or both her kids actually. So that was kind of cool. So, Meera, were you are you still working?
No, I retired. It's going to be 10 years
No
next year.
way.
Next year.
Okay. But I met Meera through the library, well, not only as a parent of one of my students, but also she was our library tech, and she helped us with a lot of our sixth grade stuff, like our with study of ancient world history. We of course had to cover ancient India, and
Oh,
she
yeah.
would help with lots of different things. But one of my favorite ones is I remember the project we worked with Ganeshas. We made uh, clay Ganesh, and it was kind of cool.
So, Mira, you've been retired, but our podcast really plays on two things. So, retirement is ending your career, but can you tell us the other term that we use, like where you put on new tires? Like, what is your adventure now? Where are you at with your creation of a new life? So, Mira, what was your road to retirement?
That's a perfect question. Thank you for asking that because it's true. And I thought once I left the library, life was over. I was just going to sit at home,
Wow.
exercise, which I kind of do, exercise, and then cook dinner and just read. But then I had already published a book and I realized, you know what, I'm going to do another book. And really, I didn't get into writing and publishing till the last couple of years. I finished my second book and it came out during COVID. So there wasn't much publicity for it, in fact, I didn't get much sales for it, but it did win a huge award. I got a cash prize, which is rare, um, in
Wow. Yeah, it
2021.
is.
So I'm already working on my next series of books, which is going to be another three-part series. And I don't know if I'm going to publish them on my own or I'm going to get, an agent and a publisher. It all depends on what it's like. But it's been such a journey, and I think retirement, it really is not the end. When you find something that you're passionate about, and it's almost like I have no plans now to stop writing, stop publishing, and figuring out what I'm going to do. I find that every day I love waking up every day.
Oh,
Life's
that's
not a
how it's
chore.
supposed to be, Mira.
That is amazing because a lot of us, when we were quote working, and I had a job or a career, you'd go to work and you sometimes you had to drag yourself in. Where this is really different.
It really is. When you're doing something you really love, it's different.
So you found the right thing.
I did, and it's a meshing of two things. I love cooking, so I've used my cooking and my food writing. And I used to be a newspaper reporter, so I used my writing skills.
Ah,
And then now you're becoming a better editor, learning how to, and then now you're using other parts of your brain, which was really tough of learning how to format, how to bring the book to life.
Oh, that is so cool. I have to say, this new format, I much preferred, especially as a retired person with eye issues. The size, the feel of an actual book is always wonderful, but this is a little larger and easier to read, just the size of it. So that's kind of cool. This is Sunshine Clinic, a novel with recipes, book three, by my friend and colleague, Meera Klein.
Available on Amazon right now. The story behind the story of this is when I was growing up in India, all my friends and I, all my girlfriends, we all wanted to be doctors. I mean, that was the only
Wow.
career choice. Talk about peer pressure. So that summer that we were about to graduate from high school, my mother took three or four of my girlfriends, my sister, and me on a trip through South Indian medical colleges. And it was a grand adventure. We didn't have somewhere. We lost our reservation, and we had to sleep outdoors in the
Wow.
those cots that you see in Indian movies, and we had to sleep on those. And then we watched the sunrise on one occasion where the sun was. I have never seen such a sunrise. The sun was this huge orange globe that kind of hung on the horizon, and you could see the coconut palms. It was behind the coconut palms, and then it came over, and then of course it became really hot, steamy day. But in that few moments, it was so beautiful and cool. But when I came back home, I had the most severe case of food poisoning.
Ugh.
And something I had eaten. And then all night long, I was terribly ill. And the next morning, I was so listless that my mother got very worried. And she rushed me to the hospital. And we went to a small clinic that was run by a family doctor that my mom had known when he was in diapers. That's how life was in India in those days. And he gave us very special attention, and I stayed there for 2 days convalescing. And
Wow.
while waiting for me to get better, he found out what we had been doing, and he said, well, I can write you a recommendation letter, which will go a long way in getting into medical school. But why do you want to become a doctor? And I said, oh, I want to be a doctor because I want to live in a village, and then I want to meet all these really interesting people, and I want to write a book about it. And he goes, what? You don't want to be a doctor, you want to be a writer. I said, I want to be just like James Harriet, the guy in the...
Oh my God, I love him too. Go ahead.
And so that's when it was like a moment of epiphany, because then I realized I don't have to go into the sciences. I can go into the art, into literature, all the things I really love. So that's when I changed my major, and I changed my whole direction in my life.
That was a good piece of advice. I mean, and maybe you wouldn't have heard it from someone else, maybe in your own family, or they wouldn't want it to crush your ambition. But this doctor who knew this craft was able to
Yes.
direct you, and you were able to hear that. That's pretty cool.
And just with you saying it out loud, that was the funniest, truest response. Because, like, I want to write a book. And it's so glaringly obvious. That's what you always wanted to do, is just write a book.
Yeah, I just want to live in a rural area, and I meet all these quirky characters, the guy that comes with an accent and wants you to do something weird. And so what I did is I changed all that, what I wanted to do in my half-life into a book. That's what's nice
Wow.
about being a writer.
That is so cool. I have to say this, as I was reading the Sunshine Clinic, it gave me the same feel as Call the Midwife, but India version.
Oh, I should do that on my subs. Yeah, that's a cool, because most people have said it does remind them of James Harriet. My editor said that.
Yes.
Because of the feel of the quirky characters, and the way that sometimes they are, I don't know how far you've gotten into the book, but
I read the whole thing.
there are places where the local headman or the village man, and he thinks he's a doctor, he interferes in the treatment. And that's what these villagers have done all these years. They've let him do what they need, and it results in things not healing properly, broken bones not healing properly, women not being treated. And it seemed like women's health was really missing. Healthcare was missing in the village. So that was kind of what I wanted to.
Well, and that's what I get with, like, Call the Midwife. It's woman-centered, and it's the same thing. And it's very culturally rich. So you not only get the story and the ideas, the themes behind it, but you get the rich cultural clues that just make it so beautiful.
Yeah.
So, Meera, on Friday, I guess it was, Sue and I talked about having you on, and I tried to get my copy of the Sunshine Circle on Kindle and Amazon. And the problem with being in Cuba is there's an embargo, and so my credit card can't be used from Cuba in order to purchase and download the books. So I'm kind of going into this with just a little bit of background, and a couple of questions that really struck me. First, I just got done talking to someone about James Harriet. He was like one of my most favorite authors. I read every book up, and so my question is, those were his experiences lived. And are you writing then about your lived experiences, but through fake names, or did you create these stories from your head?
That's a great question. No, I never. I'm interested in all things medical, even to this day. Um,
Wow. So there is a part of you that could
oh
have been
my
a
God,
doctor.
yeah, I could have easily, yes. I really appreciate healing, and I like alternative, medical practices, which is what this lady, this girl, she's open to using herbs instead of getting something to stop nausea. Let's drink ginger tea. Let's take a little bit of
Yeah.
garlic for some kind of antiviral thing if you don't need the actual viral thing. But not always. But no, they're definitely. I was never in the medical field. I was a newspaper reporter, then a stay-at-home mom, then a volunteer, then a library tech, and then I became a writer. But all along, I think inside I've always been a writer.
I love this. I love this. This is retirement, embracing your identity. Yeah.
How did you know, at what point did you know you loved to write? Like since you were 3, or was there an experience at school? Like when did you know you loved writing?
Ah, well, I think I've known it all my life. There were moments, I always kept a journal when I was a child. I always wrote in it, I scribbled in it, I wrote poetry. And in college, I made a little bit of money by doing greeting cards for my friends. I wrote cards that they sent to their
Wow, that's
Fun.
little
fun.
poems for their. And then in high school, every year in India, they had an essay competition. And every year I won it. And it was and there were the subjects were weird. One year was diseases, and so I did diseases from A to Z, and so you needed a little bit of research. And we were the only kids, I think, in the whole. We lived in a little hilltop village in South India, and during the British era, that area became known as Little England because it was 5,000 meters above sea level. This little the hilltop town, and it was called the Blue Mountains or Nilgiri. So it was also the honeymoon destination of India. Everybody goes up there because it's so beautiful. In those days, I think it's changed now, but in those days, it never got warmer than about 70 degrees, 75 at the
Oh,
most during the
nice.
summer. Yes. And it was a place where they grew peaches and plums and nectarines because it
Oh,
didn't grow in the plains. It was mangoes and bananas and jackfruit in the plains. So when the British came and they lived and they made their home, they had little bungalows that they made it into like English cottages. And when my uncle and my mother moved in 19, I think in the 19 late 1940s, 1949, 1950, up to the Nilgiris, they bought a small bungalow because we got our independence in 1947, and so a lot of the British left. And 3 years later, when we moved up, my uncle bought a little bungalow in a place called Kotagiri, which is one of the 3 towns. And I grew up sitting on, eating from Wedgwood china and having all these
wow.
really beautiful pieces of furniture, teak, and that didn't match what
can
we lived.
imagine.
And when my granny, my mother's mother, when we moved up there, when she saw all the soup tureens and the sterling silverware, she goes, "Oh, people have eaten meat on this. We need to give it away." So she gave all the beautiful
Wow.
china to these villagers.
Oh, wow.
So some archaeologist is going to go there years from now and find Wedgwood china pieces and wonder, how did that get here in this small village in India?
That is funny.
That's a great story.
I wanted to know, our audience to know, the blue eyes that keep coming up. The Scottish blue
Oh,
eyes. Yeah.
Yes, I have an affinity for blue eyes. So when I was 16, my father passed away, and for 2 years I went and attended a local college. During those 2 years, my family members were trying to arrange my marriage because they felt
wow.
without a father, we needed someone to take care of us. And my mother, for some reason, went, and as she was independent, she was one of the few women at that time who had a career. She was a school teacher. She taught science and English in high school. And so she was our primary breadwinner after my father retired. So I don't know why she went with this. She knew about independent women, but she went with what these elders were telling her. And it's very similar to what I wrote in my experiences in the previous book, where all my family members gathered around and tried to convince me to get married to this person who didn't even come, had the courtesy to come and see me. He sent his some relatives, and he said, just say you want to get married to me. And I'm like, no, I need to see you.
Oh.
And then so they gave me a picture, and the picture was like this guy squinting into the sunshine. And I said, if I was going to get married, I want to
No.
be marrying a guy who looked like a movie star. If I was going to be shallow, and it was all about looks. So that was not the case, and I don't know where I got the courage. I said no.
Good for you, Meera. Good for you.
But
Oh,
they
wow.
made my life
Yes.
so miserable that I wrote to an uncle who lived in the Bay Area, and I said, I can't live here because they're now saying you have to now get married to the next person. We're going to find someone else, and this and that. And so it was really hard, and my mother wasn't supportive at that time. So when I wrote to my
Oh,
uncle,
that's even worse.
yes, he sent me a visa application for student visa application and a plane ticket, open-ended plane ticket. And so it took a while. It took
And
almost
again, this is your uncle?
my mother's brother, the one that bought the house in the Neilgurry.
But think about that. It was a man who was fighting for your freedom.
Yes. So
That's beautiful.
he and his aunt, he was married to an American. She was from Virginia. So I came over, and he had a meditation center in the Bay Area, and that's where I stayed for the next 4 years. And I lived a very sheltered life. I had people driving me to school. I didn't know how to drive. I didn't learn how to drive till I got married. So it was like living in India. He was very protective, my uncle. And my aunt, I was very close to her. She just passed away 2 years ago at 101.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So from her, I learned this love for Southern literature, decadent chocolate desserts, and taking long walks on the beach.
That's amazing. Meera, you're such a brave person. Doesn't surprise me, though.
It didn't seem like I was brave. It was really hard, and I thought I had no other way except to do this. And so I was so happy to come. And then I went to Sonoma State and got my bachelor's in communication studies. Then I got a master's in independent studies with journalism and then I took some classes at Berkeley to bring the
And
scores
let's
up.
talk about English. How did you learn English? When did that begin? I mean, here you are. You're still young, and you're
Birth.
going to a university learning in another language.
No, see, so in India, it's just like in Harry Potter. The private schools, or in England, the private schools are actually public schools. So they call them public schools, but you have to pay for them. It's private. It's not. And so I went to a public school, which was an English medium school. So everything was taught in English.
So you were in English immersion, basically.
Yeah, from birth, really. Because my uncle and aunt, they came and visited us when I was like 6, and they stayed 6 months old, and they stayed till I was about 4. And so my first introduction was English. I talked to them in English. I listened to them. And then our primary communication was, even when my sister was here, we talk in English, and then we have, when you have a second language, you have certain adjectives that you add at ing, and we say, the Indian word with ing. So we mix up the languages when we talk. So
Is there a term for that? In Spanish, it's Spanglish. Is there a term for yours?
I think we used to call it butler English.
Oh, Butler English. I love it. Okay. Very cool.
And you just brought me back to, because my parents were from Norway,
Oh.
and they owned a small paving business. And so there were a lot of pieces of equipment that didn't exist or know about. And so they would throw in an EN. So like they would say, "Domtrokken," and they throw in an EN at the
Yes.
end, like your ing.
Yes.
And you just flashed me back to my childhood. Thank you.
People who've read it, in fact, people from our little town who've read it, they said they couldn't put it down.
Well, I devoured it in like
Oh.
2 days. It was, yeah.
And it didn't take me 2 days to write. It took me like
Yeah.
a whole year, and then another year of waiting from the publisher, and then another year of going back and redoing everything, because I realized I took a lot of it out, because she told me she wanted only a certain number of words, which is like 60,000 words. And so I had written a 70,000. So I went out and I edited everything. I took it out. Then I had to go back and put everything back in. So it was a long process, the whole thing.
You cracked me up when you said it took me a lot longer to make it than the 2 days to read it. It's kind of like food, Meera.
I know.
We do this as in the kitchen. We put so much, especially homemade, real homemade, from farm to fork, recipes, you take so much time to cook and prep and all and shop and all those things, and then people wolf it down in 15 minutes. You're like, what?
Yes, true. You guys are gourmet cooks.
Oh my! And that's another thing in your book, in your writing. Everything it's a hard read in that as you're reading you get all this delicious food and then you're hungry and you're not hungry but you become hungry and you want to go eat, so it's hard because I'm thinking about food as I'm reading the story. Yeah.
So, Mira, I want to share with you a little bit about my introduction to Indian food. So, I began teaching at a high school in Fairfield, and I was teaching English as a second language, they called it back then. And I had a few students from India, and I was a little bit terrified because my Norwegian parents had interesting foods that I was forced to eat that I really was traumatized by. So the idea of eating another culture's food that was so different that I had never tried kind of scared me. But I fell in love with this little girl. Her name was Niraj, and she's so tender and gentle, and I could not refuse. And so I had some samosas, and that was the beginning of the end. And I absolutely fell in love with it. And as I have brought Maria into the world of Indian food, because I said, you got to try this stuff. It's the best ever. And in fact, that's on my list to go to India, because I just like the eat, pray, love concept. I want to bypass Italy and I want to eat my way through India. And what I describe it as, it hits every taste bud on your tongue. You get the sour, the sweet, the salty. I mean, to me, it's like I don't know. I can go on and on. So, if nothing else, I'm excited for the recipe section in your book. And but the only thing that intimidates me, and maybe you could talk me into it or make it seem safe, is how isn't it pretty all day arduous cooking? From what I understand, like this is not an easy whip out the thing in an hour or two. Is
uh,
that true?
I guess it can be true. Now, the first book I wrote was called My Mother's Kitchen, and it actually had recipes from my own mother's kitchen. And my mother,
Oh,
was a career woman, and she was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and making us breakfast and packing her lunch and leaving by 7:30. So she has to take this long bus ride to where her school was. So she didn't
wow.
have time to fuss around and make, elaborate meals. So those recipes reflect her lifestyle, which is quick, quick, quick. And
Okay.
one of my favorite recipes, which I have shared many times with people, is lemon rice. It's basically cooking basmati rice, Indian rice, or you can do, I do it now with brown rice because it's just so much better for you. And there's red rice and green rice. I mean, there's all these different rices, or quinoa. I mean, if that's your thing. So you cook the rice, and then in another thing, you cook some onions and garlic. And in Indian food, we have what we call the ending, which is you fry up oil, and then you add mustard seeds and you wait for them to pop, and then you add like stir fry things um, like lentils. It's called urad dal, which is white gram. You can find them in Indian stores. So you add those things, and then you finish off. It's called the finishing touch. All Indian dishes do. So what my mother did is she started that as the beginning. So she would pop the mustard seed, then add the onions and the lentils, cook it, and then add the rice, and you add some lemon juice, and then finish it off with some dried roasted cashews. And it's like the
Oh
simplest
my
meal
gosh.
with lemon juice and turmeric, and it just my sons love it. And then I usually serve that with a potato ginger stew made with
Oh my
coconut milk.
God.
And I mean, all this you
I'm
can do in
done.
20
I'm
minutes.
done. I'm getting that book as soon as I get home.
She keeps talking all the details, and you can just smell it. You can taste it on
Oh,
your mouth,
oh, it's there.
and
I'm
then you're
already
like,
like
I can't
smiling,
read
ready to
right now. I
cry.
gotta go eat. Yeah.
In fact, I think people said that in the first book on Amazon, in their reviews. Don't read this if you're hungry.
Or if you're hungry, then you know, and you're not sure what you want to eat, then you now know what you want to eat. I love the idea, though, of keeping it authentic, lovely food that is is doable in our society and in our format of how we want to, it doesn't have to be all day. It can be, which is when you're retired, if you're not working and you want to spend a whole day
Yeah,
making a lovely
you
meal,
want to
you could
grind the
do that.
spices and do it
Yeah.
yourself. Yep, and you want to, in when we were growing up in India to make coconut milk, you cracked open the coconut, then you used a scraper, which was really hard. You had to have a
Oh,
lot of muscle,
jeez.
scraped it out, and then you ground it. Then you used it, you used your hands to squeeze it out. And then the second one you put
Oh,
hot water so you get a little bit more out. Now you go to the store and get a can of organic
thank
coconut milk. So,
God.
this Indian stew is like 10 minutes it's a 10
Yeah.
minute thing to do. So things are different.
So I want to just bring up another thing that this did for me. So as truly, I am not kidding, as you're explaining this, obviously you're a storyteller to boot, and I love Indian food. And as you're describing this, my whole body is getting excited and I'm getting tears in my eyes. And it flashed me back to, and I got to bring it to this. So the peak of my divorcing, the most difficult time in my life, I ended up meeting Maria at a cigar shop, and she's Cuban. And she was living in an apartment in the back of the cigar shop. And when she saw that I had a kitchen and we became fast friends, her whole world opened up because she absolutely loved cooking. And I realized I absolutely did not. And as I was weighing like 113 pounds, like I weighed less in that part of my life than I did in high school. That
Mm.
says a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I gave up on cooking. I gave up on wanting to eat. I had no desire. And now I'm at a fine 150, thanks to Maria, because she introduced me to Cuban food and I just fell in love with it. Like
Mm.
I just couldn't stop eating it. And one of the retirement steps and how this business became is because her cooking nurtured my soul.
Mm.
And I'm realizing that good food, homemade food, nutritious food that's made with someone who loves making it
Mm.
is kind of like a miracle cure.
It is.
It's saved my soul, and I love food. And so that began our business about a year and a half ago, where I said, Maria, I think you need to cook for people. Everybody's always loved your pig roast parties at the cigar shop, and you saved my soul. So what do you think about cooking? And and that's how this whole business morphed.
Mm.
And I just want to say that your description now and all of it reassures me that cooking is very important and it's a healing thing. So Mira, I look forward to reading your book and heal further.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think we have a colleague who had a little heart problem at one time. And one of the things I made for her was this juice. To me, it was like the simplest thing. It was celery, kale, lemon juice, mint.
Oh,
And I made her a juice and I took it to her, and she swears that healed her. And it said
oh,
it, and I think it wasn't the juice, but the act of me thinking about her while I made it and then gave it. There was something healing in that whole process. So food, as healing your soul from inside out, is totally true. I'm there with you, Tina.
and Mira, that's exactly what Maria has said to me. She's like, "Well, Tina, it's because I'm making it with love." And
Exactly.
I think there is something about that. Is you're right. There's something about when you do it out of love and all that good energy that goes into it. I believe it too, Mira. 100%.
I'm on board. Very good. All right. So, I do have a question about the formatting to kind of shift over to another topic. Um, there, you have a lot of chapters, very short. Some are very, very short, like maybe 2 pages, and then others maybe 6 to 8 pages in length. So tell me about your formatting. Why do you do it that way? And yeah, so
So that's not really formatting. It's a writing issue. When I wrote the book, I actually write with my eyes closed. So I'm in that place and describing it so you can see what I'm seeing. And so some of the chapters had to be short because that's all there was. And I tried to like put chapters together, but towards the end of the book, without trying to give away anything, it gets to be between the two people in the book. And so he didn't have much to say, or she didn't have. It was more like a little slice of what their thought was. But I wanted a different point of view. And I know some people, and I've read books where it's very confusing and suddenly it's another point of view. But I didn't want to do that. Because I'm much more like more, I think it's anal. But I liked it to have it more of a the format of the book to be where you knew exactly who was saying what or thinking, and that was challenging because when one of the editors I worked with, there was times when I was saying something and she was saying, well, no, you can't, because you're saying it like he's thinking, but you're describing it like she's feeling, and so I have to remember to keep. That's why I think it was to keep the point of view separate.
I
That's
get
why I
that.
did
Okay. And that to me was interesting because as I was reading, I in retrospect I should have recognized it, and I think I did it some of the time when it became real clear that you were talking from different points of view. But I was wondering if you were like, some of the chapters almost felt like independent stories in and of themselves. And were you writing like from a collection of short stories altogether, or do you like just journal in that format? You write your writing exercises to write in that format. I got one done, and then you walk away and you do something and come back.
Yeah,
Just wondering.
the way I wrote the book was I wrote it in my head first. I go, okay, this first chapter it's going to be this her coming home. So I'm going to describe it, and what am I going to do? Okay, so train ride, which is what I'm familiar with. That's what so that I had that in mind, and I said, okay, well, with that I have a recipe that could go with it. The bonda, which is a little potato dumplings that are deep fried, and you have them with
God.
this sauce. They are very good. Very, very bad for you, but so good. And so that's how I thought.
No,
and I
no,
said-
I mean it in the best way. I'm already tasting your potato dumplings.
And so
I'm like
I
thinking
said it.
about the plane
I did
ticket.
it ahead of time. And then that was a very bad habit. Just before going to bed, I would do.
I
the
was
whole-
wondering. Yes.
and if I didn't stop it, I could stay up all night.
Yep. Yep.
Which
That's
I don't turn off my mind. I could just think about the book,
Right.
and it is a little stressful that way. So that's how I did. I did one chapter, and I could do one chapter a day at night, and then the next day I had never had writer's block. Some people had written. What do you do? I knew the story where it had to go. It was just a matter of what I wanted to do next.
That's what I was wondering, and that's kind of the feel that I got was, so then like is your urgency to write keeping you up at night then? Like you're saying you've got another series coming along, are you up at night uh, writing your stories in your head and then just what?
I have to make a conscious decision not to think about it, because when I do that, I've written 30. It's a cozy mystery series, and it's I did a class on how to write cozy mysteries, and the lady who taught it read the parts of it, and she said, "You're going to do for tourism what Alexander McCall did for Botswana."
Oh.
She really liked
Wow.
it was the same, and it has food in it. The heroine, or the lady, she's a retired school teacher. She's a kind of a combination of my great granny, my mom, and this other teacher that I grew up with. She's a combination of all these women, and she decides to open up a tea stall. So it's a tea stall mysteries, and so.
Oh, cool.
And she's a
Oh,
school teacher. She
gosh,
sure
this
knows
sounds so good.
everyone. She knows, who's who from when they were
Yep.
young,
Yep.
how they are, and when they grow up. And so one of her students is the police officer, so she gets the help from the police, and gets into, of course, like all those murder mysteries, there's a lot of things going on wrong in this village.
When's the last time you were back in India?
Yeah.
Not since 2007. It's been a while.
Wow, it has been a while.
Yeah.
But you've been
And-
there in your mind the whole time.
Yes, and people tell me, in fact, some of the
Oh.
people say, well, what you write is sort of a fairy tale, because India's not like that anymore. So I'm thinking of when I was growing up, because I'm now, 60 years old, I'm thinking of what was, 20, 25, 30,
That's
40
true. It's
years
changed.
ago. Yeah, it's changed. It's more
But
crowded.
that's okay to set it during that time in your mind, because that's what's going to fuel your happiness.
It
So
is.
it's probably better.
Yeah, so it's kind of a nostalgic thing.
Do you still have tons of family in India?
I do. My sister lives in India, but her daughters are here. So eventually, I'm hoping she'll be able to immigrate here, so she'll be here. But we have a lot of extended family. So the Ekkanath in my middle name is actually my family name. So in Kerala, we have matriarchies. We don't have a patriarchy. So,
Oh.
yeah, that's it. That's another thing that's going to come out in one of the books.
I'm loving this already.
I am too.
So, in patriarchy, it meant women had rights. They had property rights, and they had the right to say yes or no to a marriage.
Wow.
That is in olden days. Obviously, 40 years ago, I did not have a say, but I did say it, and we never finished of how it happened. So when I came over to the United States, um, one of the advices I got from several cousins who were leaving at the airport is don't come back with a white guy. And I was here for 4 years and I never met anybody. The last year I was taking a third world political systems class. It was a 300 level for my master's. And this guy was sitting next to me. He was taking it because he was hoping to go to Morocco on to use solar energy to dry apricots. And so he was learning about third world
Oh,
policy system just as he had already graduated, and it ended up going to India instead. But we got married in India, and it was like that was a big experience for him.
how did your family receive him?
It was very hard for them at first.
Uh-huh.
And so one time that we were traveling all together in a train, it was a air conditioned coach, and we were sleeping, and there was only two bunks. My mother had one bunk, and my sister had the other, and then we were sitting, my husband and I. And during the night, I lay down because it was a two-seater, and I lay down, and I had my head on his lap, and he sat up all night. And my mom said, anybody who sits up all night and lets you sleep on his lap is okay.
Aw,
Oh,
that's
she-
sweet.
that's
she-
so nice.
She changed her mind about him.
That is sweet.
So my memoirs, I'm thinking of writing a memoir too eventually with all these stories.
I think you should. Yeah.
And the matriarchy and what it means
Mm-hmm.
to grow up in it, and to have that as your shadow.
Well, because, so for many of us, we don't even understand what that even would look like or mean. So I think it's a great story. I think it's an important one to tell.
Yeah, because in olden days, I'm talking about my grandmother and great grandmother's time, the women, when they got married, they didn't leave their home. The husband came to them, and so he was a visitor. And I was
He's
like,
a
oh my!
visitor.
I always tell them in teasing, if you came once a month, I would treat you like the king.
There you go.
Living with you day to day, that's different. So there was like the marriage was much more loose. There was like and the idea was that I think he had more than one wife. He went from house to house.
There
He
you
may have had
go.
another house, and so but because she lived with her uncles and so the uncle was the greatest person in the life of these people, because there's a matriarchy. Your mother's brother was a big person in your life. And so you lived in a household with all your family members. Abuse was very little.
That's so lovely.
Of course, there's people will call you up if there's Indian people listening saying, that's not true. Mira's wrong. There was lots of abuse. We got abuse. So, I mean, it depends on the family.
We're human beings. There's abuse, and yeah.
Yeah. So, but on the whole, I think it was a good system because it really empowered women. And so the Eknath name can only be passed to the female line. So I have two boys,
Wow.
and their middle names are Eknath, but it ends with them. My sister has two girls, so if she kids marry, they will pass on the Eknath name. Otherwise, it's
Oh, interesting. Wow.
so.
You're completely scratching, scraping, deteriorating every thought I had. I did not realize really that there was matriarchy and existing, and especially in India, because I used to read Bird. It was called Hopeless Bird, a book to my sixth graders.
I remember.
Was it Hopeless Bird?
Yes.
Helpless Bird.
And then, but in that, it's the rest of India, 99% of India, it's patriarchy.
Okay.
And even in a
Wow.
matriarchy, to be a man in a matriarchy, you are so well taken care of. Because,
Uh,
so.
Because women take care of, family. That's true.
yeah. Wow. Well, I would love to read something more about that, because I can't even begin to wrap my head around it. And what a different perspective that would be.
I wanted to shift over to themes, though.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you to read, if
Okay.
you would,
Yeah.
if you feel comfortable.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. And this one felt really relevant to me. The theme of it's end of life and trying to make peace with a big mistake. It's in this. This is a part of a story where the wealthy man in the village, without giving too much away, the wealthy man in the village has to confront a personal issue within his family, and a big mistake was made. and he's on his deathbed. He's dying of cancer, and he has to make it right.
Okay, so this is Sunny speaking. Life is complicated, I said. Cancer is not a pretty disease. Mother Superior nodded and said, No, it is not. Life is indeed complicated, dear one. Those are wise words. As a woman of God, I wrestle with the dilemma every day. Life is not in black and white or even gray. It's a myriad of colors and experiences. Humans can make everything wonderful, complicated, and hopelessly all simultaneously. I'm sorry I was so hasty in judging him, I said. I have a lot to learn. She smiled and replied, We all do. I may be older, but it's never too late to keep learning. Today you taught me something. What? I asked in surprise. How to forgive graciously and accept an apology. Because of your kindness, a sad, lonely man will die in peace. Ultimately, we all have to face our Creator with a clear heart and conscience.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Did you cry when you wrote that?
No, I don't think so. There is in my mother's kitchen when my father died. I did cry in that thing, and certain people have said when they read the book they've cried.
Yeah.
There's something about my writing, and I even there was a blog post that I had done on my on a mutual friend that we had, and when people read it after he passed away, there was people who did cry, including his wife who called me up, and
Well, it's because it's human. You're
yeah.
writing very frank, very real, very just clear what the human condition is. This is what I love about Call the Midwife,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what I love about this is that it's unapologetically just real and has emotions and feelings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, I when I write, I just try to go deep into myself to bring out those emotions, and I think that you have to have that when you write it. Otherwise, it's kind of not genuine.
I agree. That's right.
And you know, I'm a spiritual person, so I bring that. I believe in a greater power, and I meditate and I do mindfulness. So I try to bring all that into my writing. Um,
It shows. I think even in you were talking about your process and writing, you kind of meditate on it and form that first, and then you do the
yeah, so
physical labor of it.
in my head, I've already done the editing, so that's why it's very hard for me to have someone edit my work because I'm like very possessive of what I've done. I said I've in my head I've done it, and then I wrote it down. That's like 2 times editing. What more do I need to do?
Well, that's amazing. Good luck, and we hope to have you back.
All right, thank you so much, Sue and Tina.
Thank you. Tina and I would like to thank Meera Klein for joining us today and sharing her new book, Sunshine Clinic, a novel with recipes, Book 3. Make sure you check it out on Amazon. That wraps up this episode of Retired. Thanks for listening. Until next week, please feel free to lend your feedback or ask questions by emailing us at retiredpodcastnewtred@gmail.com. You're invited to follow us on Facebook at Retired Podcast New Tread. Check the show notes for links and contact information. It is co-hosted by Sue Britz and Tina Lookbach. It is produced, directed, and edited by me, Sue Britz. Musics and graphics are also by me. Please click to subscribe so that you won't miss your chance to join our retired road trip. That wraps up this episode of Retired. Thanks for listening. Until next week, please feel free to lend your feedback or ask questions by emailing us. Until next week, please feel free to lend your feedback or ask questions by emailing us at. Until next week, please feel free to lend your feedback or ask questions by emailing us at retiredpodcastnewtred@gmail.com. You're invited to follow us on Facebook at Retired Podcast New Thread. Check the show notes for links and contact information. Retired is co-hosted by Sue Britz and Tina Lookbach. It is produced, directed, and edited by me, Sue Britz. Music and graphics are by me too. Please click to subscribe so that you won't miss your chance to join our retired road trip.